Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming, and thanks for that are here in person, and thanks for those that are all joining online. I'm going to make just a brief statement. You all got the press release this morning, and then I'll open it up for questions. But I just want to start out by saying, on behalf of First Lady Catherine and myself, it's been such an honor these last 7 years to serve the state that we love so much. It's been a true honor. It's been a profound and rewarding and incredible experience, and because of that, it was a very difficult decision for us, a heartfelt decision to not seek a third term. But I'm happy to report the state is incredibly well positioned. Population's never been higher, our financial position's never been stronger, and the opportunities have never been greater. It's never been a better time to work, to live, to play, to raise a family in North Dakota than ever before in our state's 134-year history. So we've got some debate on whether we have 327 or 328 days left based on what sources you check, but I think that's a fact-based thing. We can get to the bottom of this depending on what time you count midnight on December 14th, but know that our cabinet team and our governor's office team is planning a full and complete schedule for this year, and we intend to run through the tape hard as I've done through everything in my life, and so we're going to have a very active last year in office, and happy to talk more about that as well today.
Governor, so
if you could, for people online today, I know you guys all know each other, but say the name and who you're with, and so that our viewers that are online can know who's asking.
Justin Garrick with KFYR TV. So, Governor, is this announcement in part due to your endorsement of President Trump last week and a possible important role that he has been talking about with you?
Completely and totally unrelated. It's flattering what President Trump has said from the stage and said publicly, but the two things are completely not connected at all.
If I could follow up on that, what are these final months going to look like for you? I know you're going to be traveling a lot, doing campaign events and stuff. Are you going to be more focused on that or stuff that's going on in the state?
Well, my job, the job that I love, the greatest job in the world, is Governor of North Dakota, and as I've done the last 7 years, as I've done the last 6 months, is I'm going to fulfill not just the letter of the law, the constitutional duties of doing this job, but I'm going to do everything I can to serve the state of North Dakota. And it turns out that right now, having had the opportunity to be governor under President Trump and having the opportunity to be governor under President Biden, I can speak for the entire state. From terms of a state that really depends on energy, really depends on agriculture, depends on manufacturing, depends on having safe and secure borders. Our state was much better off, as most families were under President Trump, than we have been under Joe Biden. In particular, what we see right now as governor, part of the job that myself and every other elected official in our administration, we're under an onslaught from federal regulation. There's over 20 different rulemaking efforts right now that are trying to crush energy and agriculture in particular in our state. All you have to do is tune into a land board meeting and an industrial commission meeting, and you'll find out that in every one of those meetings we're spending a substantial amount of time talking about how we're trying to push back against federal overreach that affects our economy, our citizens, and our national security. So if there is time that I'm spending helping support getting someone in office who's gets it right on energy, gets it right on economy, and gets it right on national security, that's a good thing for North Dakota. Jack?
Jack Dura with the Associated Press. Was there a specific reason you chose not to seek for a third term, and what will your next steps be?
Well, I'll talk about the next steps which is just driving hard on this year. One of the things that's unique about North Dakota is that our legislature meets only every other year. I think there's only a handful of states that do that. The outgoing governor has the responsibility to prepare the budget. So you'll all have an opportunity to hear me next December to be presenting the budget for the legislature that'll be meeting a year from now in January to talk about the 25-27 biennium. So one thing that I know that our governor's office team, and one thing I know that our cabinet leaders know, that the work that we will put in this spring on the strategic planning process, which is a comprehensive system that we implemented after we got into office. Well, 75 different agencies, will be presenting their strategic plans. That feeds into the budgeting process, and our intention is to give the legislature the best ever beginning product they've ever received in terms of a strategic plan that'll keep the momentum going across all the initiatives that we've been focused on here, whether it's education, whether it's behavioral health, whether it's tribal relations, whether it's just growing our economy and diversifying our economy, all of those things. So that agenda, and then as part of that, as you know, we've got regular events. So we will be holding Recovery Reinvented next October. We'll have our Main Street conference again this year. We'll have the Governor's Summit on Education, and we'll have a tribal to tribal government, the best government to government conference in the country between states, federal, and tribal entities. So all of those things will be happening. So we have a full schedule that's driving. In terms of decisions that went into this, it was may seem trite and overused, but part of it is it's family. It's we've got three. People always say you got 3 adult kids, but it's as a dad, which I took very seriously as my role as a dad when the kids were young and during their time growing up. But it's pointed out to me that our youngest was a senior in high school when I was running for office in 2016, and now he's 25. And my daughter pointed out, "Hey, Dad, I was turned 21, and I'm going to be 29 after 2 terms." And so when the kids aren't living here in Bismarck, it's one of the sacrifices. When you serve, the family also serves, just like the military, just like anything else. And so I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I love that part of my life. And right now, my expectation, the thing that I know that can be certain if I'm leaving here is that there's gigantic opportunities in the private sector where I spent a lot of time. And just like in this job, you do it right in the private sector, creating great jobs and having a big impact. So I think impact is going to be what drives the decisions I make in the future. Wherever that path may be, it's going to be where I can have the biggest impact.
Yeah, on that note, you mentioned opportunities in the private sector. Is there anything specifically you're planning to do after you leave office? Are you ruling out a run in the future for future public office?
Not ruling out a run for future office. If that were to come out, no, I'm not ruling that out. Amy?
Dalrymple with the North Dakota Monitor. Just to clarify, are you interested in the vice president position or a cabinet post if Trump were to be elected to a new term?
Well, all of that's hypothetical at this point in time because President Trump would have to win the nomination. He'd have to win a tough election in the fall. And then, of course, that's all up to the president. The president gets to decide on who's his running mate and who's his cabinet team. And I'm sure that he'll pick an excellent cabinet and an excellent running mate at the time of his choosing.
Quick follow-up. How much do you expect to spend campaigning for him during the next few months?
I don't have any way of evaluating that. I know that this primary campaign could be over very quickly. I mean, it could be over next Wednesday. In terms of the rate that people are dropping out of this race, and I think that's a good thing. Consolidate behind a single Republican and focus on beating Joe Biden in the fall.
Jack Durer with the Associated Press, if I may again. What was the toughest part about being governor of North Dakota? Something you didn't expect or was very difficult that you encountered?
Well, I'd begin with the beginning. When we announced in January of 16 that we were going to run for governor, we knew that the state was facing financial challenges because of where we were headed with that oil price crash. During that time frame, we knew there was going to be budget challenges. But on the day that we announced, there was no way to anticipate that when we were sworn in, Brent Sanford and I, on December 15th of 2016, that there'd be, 10,000 people protesting illegally on federal land at DAPL, and that was a challenging way to start out, because of course the risk of human life was real during that time frame. It was violent. People were armed on both sides, and if you take a look at that first 76 days, it took us 76 days to get through the camp clearing. I think it was February 23rd, 2017 was that was not a night that I'd spent any time sleeping, because we had made the decision as, Commander-in-Chief of the North Dakota National Guard, working with law enforcement. We just said, hey, spring floods are coming. We've given every opportunity for people to leave. We weren't getting help from the federal government during my first 35 days in office, and we said we're clearing the camp tomorrow, and said a lot of prayers that night, and thankfully we got through that without any injuries. But that was when you've got violent protesters, posting online that they're not going home until law enforcement is in a body bag, and then you're making the call to send people in to clear the camp. That was an interesting way to start out public service.
Dave Thompson with Prairie Public. You did talk about the budget as being one of your priorities. Are there any other big things on your agenda for the next 7 months?
Well, I think there's some new things that we want to kick off and extend, but they all fall under an umbrella of not new, which is we've got a workforce challenge in our state, just like the nation does. Our economy has the potential; it's very strong. We have among the highest workforce participation and the lowest unemployment in the state. It was huge this last time that we had a real shift in the legislature where people understood that child care, the affordability, availability, and the quality of child care was actually a workforce infrastructure problem. It wasn't like, oh, this is something government shouldn't be in, whatever. I mean, these are small businesses across our state, mostly women-owned. They're struggling with staff. They're struggling with their own economics. And when they can't offer slots, then we end up with parents that are well-educated staying home and out of the workforce. And when we don't have the workforce to run our manufacturing, to run our oil rigs, or to even run our restaurants, our economy slows down, and we're competing, with every job that's open in our state, a nurse, a teacher, a law enforcement, that job is also available in every other state. And so that's why it's so important. It all comes together. If we're going to continue to thrive as a state, we have to keep driving towards being a zero income tax state. We've got to focus on making sure we have things like, available childcare. We had examples last year of people that had jobs in North Dakota that they wanted to take, but they couldn't move because they couldn't move here because they couldn't find a childcare slot for both working parents. The legislature overcame that resistance. We put together a historic package last spring, and I think when we look ahead to next year, we're going to be proposing that not only we think about that as infrastructure, but housing as workforce infrastructure. We have people that want to come to North Dakota, but they can't find a place that's affordable that they can live. And so and whether it's supportive housing for people that are struggling with addiction or coming back out of the criminal justice system because of addiction, or whether it's market rate housing, we just have to figure out a way to be better at that, and we've got to figure out a way to achieve that without driving property taxes through the roof, because we don't solve that problem with expensive infrastructure and new schools on the edge that create neighborhoods that only the wealthiest can afford. And that everybody else subsidizes in the city with the taxes that support the growth on the edge. That solution is not a long-term solution. That's what's causing the property tax concerns in our state. Sir.
Governor Michael Oxley, North Dakota Monitor. What's something disappointing that you didn't get across the finish line? Maybe something the new governor is going to have to make a priority.
Well, I'd say the most recent one is when you hear the state of state tomorrow, and you're going to hear about the record financial endpoint that we have in terms of ending balance. When you're going to talk about our balance sheet, which is $26 billion, and all the reserve funds and where we've come in terms of this, and we have all of this cash piling up, and then we got it through the House, we couldn't get it through the Senate to have additional income tax relief. Even when we had $300 million of extra revenue that occurred, that was during the special session. We had $300 million of extra revenue that came between the first week in May and the end of June. Here we are, into the year this year, we're 151 million above the forecast already, and the forecast is coming in at a time when we've already filled every reserve we have beyond they're already full. We're double reserved, over reserved, and revenues are still piling in. So at some point, there's a responsibility to return those dollars back to the taxpayers, and I strongly believe that the income tax is something that the state can do that helps us attract workforce. And now there are close to 10 other states, including a number of energy states, that are at zero income tax. and we're competing with them for workers. And if we had more energy workers, we'd have more energy production. If we had more energy production, we'd have more tax dollars. So it's like it all goes. It's an economic system, and we've got to understand that. And we get stopped by people concerned about property taxes, but you go by county, you go by city across the state, and every they're different. We cannot fix the problem with a statewide solution. We got some places in the state where property values are dropping and there's no property tax issues. You got places in the Bakken where the payments in lieu of property tax that's coming through the oil tax thing is, we have communities that have no property tax problems. Then we have other cities that's a huge problem. And so it's nothing that can be fixed by the legislature sending more money. In our current budget, there's $4.9 billion of subsidy that's coming from the state to the locals, and if you want more of something, you subsidize it. And well, we're getting more local infrastructure that's unaffordable because we're subsidizing it. If you want less of it, you do something else. But we need more people that understand the true economics of cities, counties, park districts, and school boards, and understanding that we're building out a lot of infrastructure that they're expecting the state to pick up. And I would liken it to somebody goes out to dinner, they can order whatever they want, they get the steak, the lobster, and the champagne, and then that's fine because somebody else is going to pick up the tab. And there's proposals and ideas circulating about stopping, let's eliminate property taxes. That's not an elimination of property taxes. That just changes who picks up the tab. There's no reduction of cost whatsoever. It's a ridiculous idea that we're going to have something where other people pay for other people's decisions. I mean, that seems un-American, and certainly doesn't seem like North Dakota, and it's definitely not a solution. If you want smaller government, you got to reduce the revenue coming in. And one way you do that is lower income tax. You get less revenue coming in, that forces the trade-offs and the frugality and the efficiency that any market-based business would have. When I was in the private sector, you always had to make decisions about how to become more efficient. So it's okay to have less revenue coming in the state government at a time like that right now. So the way we do that is income tax reduction. It's not about subsidizing somebody else's property tax decisions.
Jack Dura with the AP. Have you talked to any future potential candidates for governor? Are you endorsing someone? Just what conversations have you had with future candidates?
I haven't. I suspect that there will be multiple candidates. I've heard names that are circulated. I've heard names that are speculated, but I haven't spoken to any of them and haven't made any decisions about endorsements at this time.
And then, additionally, you came into office on this vision of reinventing the state government. How do you think you achieved that?
Well, the list is long and not great. It's not great headlines, but let me just start with what I already said is the strategic planning process. I mean, if you focus on, when we came in, the culture in state government was whatever our budget is, if we get more next time from the legislature, we're a winner. If we get our budget cut, we're a loser. And so the effort is always about, to win, we have to have more inputs. In the private sector, no one wins by spending more than the other company. You win by selling more. You win by having higher customer service. You win by having better products. So the 7-year journey we've been on to try to get state government to be reinventing, to say ourselves, we've got to think about outcomes. How many people are we serving, and are they getting improving? And it's not how many people do we have on a support program. How many people can we get off of the support program because they're self-sufficient? I mean, having the right metrics and understanding what customer satisfaction look like. I mean, it's like if it's hey, I'm waiting too long to get my driver's license. It's not about building a bigger waiting room or adding more government employees behind windows. It's like, how do we create a system where you don't even have to come into the building in the first place, and I can renew my license online? And so the investment that we've made in IT to try to drive this, and what we're driving forward with what we call the business gateway and then the citizen gateway, where instead of a citizen having to come to like 150 different websites across North Dakota to try to do, I want my driver's license, my fishing license, my boat license, my car license, pay my taxes, my kid goes to K-12, I got another kid going to university. Those things are still all too siloed. So it's been a steady progress that we've made across our IT work, across getting all of the agencies working together and working as one. but we still have a ways to go because there's still too many times when you show up to interact electronically with the state of North Dakota where we're asking you to do the work as opposed to us understanding who you are and you've been a resident for 40 years and you've been paying taxes, your kids went to school here, and how can we help you? I mean, the customer service experience has to become more like the private sector, and still there. We're ahead, I think, of almost every other state. I know that what we're doing on cybersecurity and protecting citizens' data is like no other state. So we've made amazing advances, and what we're doing on reinventing how we think about our state parks and the investments we've been able to drive in state parks, because we're not competing with the private sector in many of those cases, because the Army Corps of Engineers is not going to give a private sector. We've got 3 parks on Lake Sakakawea. The Army Corps of Engineers is not going to let a private entity operate a bunch of marinas on Lake Sakakawea. Can we turn that into a world-class destination? We can, but we got to work with the legislature to have them understand we're not spending money when we invest in one of our state parks. We're actually making an investment that can generate positive return, cash on cash, high ROI, just like a private sector, and then that will benefit all the employers who will be like, hey, there's more things we can do here, and it's more affordable, and our parks can be open, beyond. I mean, if we have flush toilets that can operate year round as opposed to just during the warm summer months. I mean, there's all kinds of things that businesses we're in, whether it's education, K-12, higher education, parks and rec. So there's a lot of reinventing going on. A lot of it doesn't make headlines, but the people that work in the cabinet, they've all got initiatives they're doing to try to be more citizen-focused, more data-driven, more return on investment, and that cultural change is going to continue to ride forward regardless of who's governor, and that's going to benefit. It's one of the reasons why we've been able to do more with less across state government.
Well, the Thompson Ferry Public again. As a follow-up, you had an initiative to allow more and more state employees to work remotely if they could. Just where is that, and how is that coming along?
Well, I'd say the understanding that state employees need to have the ability, because today workforce is tight for state government. We have a lot of positions open in state government, making sure that we've got the right set of reasons for people to come here, including what we achieved on pension reform, having a aggressive and popular 401k option for young people to come to work for the state of North Dakota. That's great, but also that generation needs more work flexibility. We have some elected officials have the ability or all the elected, those things, they can decide. If they want to say, hey, there's no work from home, there's no work from home. Some of the other electeds have done that. On the cabinet agencies that we're working with, we're basically saying, look, if we can't fill every position that we need in state government in Bismarck or Mandan. So if we got somebody that wants to work to do bank auditing work for the Department of Financial Institutions and they live in Fargo, hey, that's great. Oh, by the way, maybe we should have an office there. Maybe we don't need an office there because people are going home. We have too much millions and millions of square footage of space that the state probably doesn't need. But can we get people to work remotely in a way where we save money on paying for real estate? And by the way, a whole chunk of our banks are in Fargo, so why would we be paying someone to drive from Bismarck to audit a bank in Fargo when they can just live there? We don't have to pay a hotel and pay mileage. So there's places where we've got to position the people and get out of this mindset that state employees only live in Bismarck. They ought to be distributed around, and so that part is thing. And some of these hard to fill positions where we wouldn't have filled them if we didn't have the flexibility for people to be able to work remotely, whether that's IT or other locations. So I think we're just having to keep pace with the way workforce is generated. Again, we've never been in a position like this. There's 10 million jobs available in America, and that's not changing. We have more baby boomers retiring than people entering the workforce. We're going to be in a chronic situation and we've got a lot of people retiring from the state of North Dakota that are of that age where they've reached or fulfilled their retirement. So as they retire, and we got to replace someone who's been here for 30 or 40 years with someone who's in their 20s. That person in their 20s, they want more flexibility, and we've got to be able to offer that, or we're going to have empty positions. I mean, and FTE, talk to the legislature. FTEs is a concept that by controlling FTEs you control spending is like an outdated, gone forever thing, never more, because they could give us unlimited FTEs, we wouldn't be able to fill the positions at the current pay rates and the current job descriptions. So we have to think differently about how the flexibility we give agencies. We're testing that in human services this year. They did not get an FTE number. They got a salary line, and go find the people to go get the work done to deliver the services, so we don't have citizens that are being underserved or not served at all because we couldn't staff.
Governor, Joel Porter from KX News. I know, slightly unrelated note, you were one of 16 governors to sign a letter to President Biden requesting a break on the electric vehicle mandate by 2032. Can you tell us why that was important for you to sign on to that?
Well, I'm happy to sign on to that with 15 other Republican governors. I would sign on to anything that stopped the EV mandates that Joe Biden is driving. I mean, this is among the most ridiculous things that's going on in our country. The hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars inside the trillions of dollars that Joe Biden was pushing that helped create the horrific inflation we have. A lot of that was basically the Green New Deal, which I have called the Green New Fantasy. It's called a fantasy because you can't somehow think that we're going to save the environment by subsidizing 500,000 EV charging stations, subsidizing EV batteries, subsidizing EV car manufacturers, without an understanding of the physics and economics. We don't have the grid. We don't have the electrical grid in this country with the resiliency and the transmission capacity to generate electricity to go to those 500,000 EV stations. That's number one. Number two is the same administration is working to shut down all the base load like they're doing in North Dakota, even when we've got, even like here where we can decarbonize our coal-fired base load and have clean coal. They're shutting that down. The attack on fossil fuels is real and aggressive. And so you're destabilizing the grid at the time we need more power, and then China controls 85% of the rare earth minerals. So then somehow we're going to subsidize batteries made in the country that's our number one adversary. So we spend 4 decades trying to get out from underneath OPEC, and then we finally do that under the Trump administration, and then we turn around and under this administration we're just going to go to what I call Sinopec, which is China and all the countries they control, and we'll get our batteries from them. And this is not to mention that batteries don't work well in cold weather. Somehow the administration, I've met with administration, there is no differentiation in their requirements, say, for the distance between 2 charging stations in North Dakota versus in Arizona. The results are very different because of the weather factors. And then somehow that EVs are going to solve train transportation, farm equipment, long-haul trucking across the northern plains, or aviation. I mean, the route to aviation, sustainable aviation fuel, is right here in the Midwest, because what can be accomplished with clean, sustainable ethanol. I mean, that's the path. I mean, NASCAR is running on ethanol. I mean, there's a path there. So I just say, hey, if you want to support liquid fuels, biofuels, ethanol, oil and gas, natural gas, all this stuff, you're on Team USA. Those resources are coming from here, and we produce them cleaner and safer and better than anyone else. And this whole EV thing is predicated on somehow it's going to make the planet cleaner and safer, and they're on Team China, and China's the largest polluter in the world by not even close. I mean, not even close. And then they're opening up a 1980s coal plant, 1 a week right now. They've got more coal plants permitted in China that are coming online than we have in the entire United States. You can't subsidize our future to a country that has got no environmental controls and then tell yourself, vote for me, I'm saving the planet. I mean, I'm not just saying it for political terms. It's true. It's a fantasy. It's not real economically. It's not real from physics, and it's not real in terms of what's good for the environment. So I'll keep signing more letters like that if they're in front of me.
We have time for one more. That's quick.
We'll go in the back.
Well, Hayes, Beck News. I was just wondering, what do you hope your legacy as governor will be?
Well, other people will have to write that, but I think that, and today's not the day to really talk about that. We got another 327 days or 28 days to drive this year, to drive solutions. But I think that people are going to understand that we were, driven by data, not by ideology. That we started from a place of deep caring about the state and the people that are here, and that we believe that in servant leadership, and that's putting the people you serve ahead of yourself.
Are you encouraging Lieutenant Governor Miller to run?
Anybody that's running for governor will make their own decisions about that. But I would just say that Lieutenant Governor Miller has been fantastic, as was Lieutenant Governor Sanford. I've been blessed to have such good partners. And one of the hard decisions about not running is that I am 100% confident that if Tammy Miller and I had run on the same ticket, that we would have won, and won by a large margin. I mean, running on our record, running as two business leaders, running as people that have got a track record here, that would have happened. So that competition and electability never entered my mind, and I don't want to be overconfident, but I know the data, I know where we are, and I know the message we have, and I'm confident with it. And she's been a fantastic lieutenant governor. But whether she or any others are going to make that decision, it's a big decision that they'll have to make with their families. And I said, any decisions I make on endorsing will come later, if at all, based on who's in the race. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. Appreciate it.